So all art comes out of a social context, but as you can see from the Target Party video, some art is produced with more self-consciousness about that context. And when you start to become more self-conscious about the context that you're working in, then history becomes increasingly important. Understanding the past of what you've done and where you're coming from in order to be able to try to structure how to move forward and what to do in the future. And history is something that kept coming up as we were doing research for the show, because both of us have been interested in this kind of work and in social movements in general for a long time. We've done a lot of our own research and read a lot of books, and we kept coming across things, looking through posters, where we were like, we had no idea this existed. It was actually shocking how many pieces we found that were about events and activities that were totally within the schema of what we thought we knew and understood, but were about things that we had never seen or heard before. Something that was extremely striking was a lot of the material we found around Native North American struggles and indigenous struggles in this country, where we found poster after poster about actions and political prisoners related to the American Indian movement and other Native struggles that never even heard people's names before. So in a time where increasingly things like the Black Panthers have become more popularized, and you start to hear more and more, there's other things like the American Indian movement, which is still largely invisible and not taught or understood.
That continues to be true in terms of world events and conditions. So we see signs of change as a pedagogical tool as well. When it was up in New York City, dozens of classrooms came and toured the show. For many high school and college students, it was the first time they kind of had access to some of these politics and ideas. And somehow using the posters and video was a much easier in than just giving them a text. So actually, I just want to take a little survey. How many people in this room have heard of apartheid that's mentioned in this poster? So there's a pretty decent education system here, but most of the time when I give a tour to high school and college students and ask them if they've heard of apartheid, very few have. And so obviously apartheid, which was a system of extreme institutionalized racism that existed in South Africa until 1994, which is only 15 years ago, is not even on the radar of kind of high school and college students of what they know of world history. And so we feel that maybe we didn't even know this before we started the show, that it actually serves this really important historical function of teaching people even about recent history that's largely not taught. Oh yeah, you want to add that?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes. Okay, so you're next.
Yeah. And just as a last point around sort of the history and context of images, one of the things that's been really important to us in putting together the show is to try to provide as much information about the generation of the images and ideas as possible. So when you walk across the campus here and go into the show, you might be a little overwhelmed with the sheer amount of text on the wall. But we actually think that's extremely important, and we're not trying to pick on one particular person, but Shepard Fairey is a really good example of how capitalism operates in the process of removing things from their original context and using them in the process of buying and selling things. And there's an immense amount of his work and other artists' work in which it's drawn from. When you walk through the show, if you're familiar, you'll see a number of examples that are drawn just directly from historical material without any context from where they came from.
I just want to go back to the last one just to say. So the one on the bottom is from Prague Spring, and the one on the top is this contemporary commercial artist named Shepard Fairey, who some of you may be familiar with because he did a lot of the Obama posters. So you can see it's pretty much directly from that. I just wanted to clarify that.
And this is a Young Lawrence poster from the Puerto Rican independence movement in New York in the early 70s, and then another reproduction without any attribution or acknowledgement.